Welcome back everyone, Mudford here. Today I'm beginning the installation on my Holley Sniper EFI setup. Supports up to 600, I've heard 600, 650 horsepower. Comes with, the backing of Holley, so that's good. The tech support from Holley. And it's just a great simple setup. You put a coolant sensor in, you drill a hole in your exhaust and put an oxygen sensor in, and it has a throttle position sensor. Everything's built right on this throttle body. The computer is in there, and then you have a little screen used to set it up, and it's gonna self-learn. I'll show you the screen that comes with it. I'm going to run it through the cord through the firewall and plug it in on the back of the throttle body there. I'm going to mount it somewhere up in here on my dash. Mount it to the roll bar here. So all I've done is I've just sat this on the intake. If you can see, my studs are too long. But I have it on the spacer because if I don't have it on the spacer, it's going to set too low and my air filter will hit that distributor. So I got it spaced up. Okay, there's my fuel pump. It's not a high pressure fuel pump. You need to run at least, I think it's going to be regulated at 58 psi. That's for a carburetor. That's only a few psi. Here's what we got. We've got two filters. Higher pressure filter on the discharge of the pump. That's a 10 micron. And on the suction of the pump, so we're going to get all this mounted up and see. With this, you have to run a return because it's going to regulate that pressure. That's going to pop open right at, I think it's 58 psi, right around 60 psi. That's going to pop open and return back to the tank. The only thing I've done so far is I did pull my tank out. This is the gas tank out of the Bronco. The sending unit goes in the very front of this, not on the top, like in a lot of applications. What they wanted you to do was put it close to the sending unit on the top, and then they gave you an elbow so your fuel line could come in like this and then drop down into the tank. And you want it pointing towards the bottom of your tank. I wasn't able to do that with this one, so what I did is I put the elbow in the tank so it's pointed down inside of there. And there's a little piece of hose that's directing it right down to the bottom of the tank. So my return fuel isn't going to be spraying all around in there, it's going to come down. And go ahead and pull the old fuel pump out and get the new fuel pump mounted. Broke it. I think we're going to mount it somewhere right around here. On our fuel low pressure filter there. High pressure one here, and we'll have to adjust that line. The EFI kit comes with the pump and the filters, and it comes with the hoses and fittings. Okay, we got it mounted on the plate now. Now I have to determine where the plate's going to set. And then I got some self-tappers. I would say probably in here somewhere. I'd say probably somewhere like that. So I have the hose routed from the tank. I think I want my pump to be right here. I can hook the hose on right there, and it should be good. I just ran the fuel pump wire back. This is the blue wire that comes off of the fuel pump relay, and you just run it back to your fuel pump and hook it to your positive post on there. They're labeled positive on one side, negative on the other. I just ran it right with the fuel lines and right through, zip tied it to those so that it'll stay right with them and hopefully remain undamaged. And for the negative side, all you got to do is connect a wire. You use a connector that's supplied with the kit, run it down to your frame somewhere, find a good clean spot, and ground it out to your frame. And that'll be it for your fuel pump. The bolts that they give you for the throttle body, or the studs I should say, are too short if you're running a spacer. So before I put the studs in for the carburetor, I'm going to throw a little bit of Loctite on the bottom, because we want the nut to come off the top. We don't want the stud to come out of the intake. Now that we have the throttle body bolted down, we're going to start working on getting things hooked up. This is the fuel return line. The fuel inlet line is on the other side. This is the built-in regulator. So we have our fuel line started. We're going to have to get it run up to here and then run the whole return line back. Before I do that, I think I want to get the throttle cable where it needs to be. So chances are with this new setup, it will be a little bit different than your old one. In case the brackets that came with the EFI kit wouldn't work, so I just kind of fabric hobbled this up. So this part will bolt to my intake, set like that. My cable will go in there. It'll all be good. Working on your throttle cable and the bracketry for it. Make certain if you're doing any welding that you just tack it at first, and then you're going to want to make sure you have full range of motion on the throttle. And I had my wife hit the gas pedal inside and make sure that it goes all the way back to hits the throttle stop and goes all the way forward when it's to the floor. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you could have problems. You could have binding. I'm hooking up the fuel supply line now. Line goes down to the frame rail, and then it runs down the frame rail, on top of the frame rail, all the way down to the high pressure filter, which is mounted on the discharge of the pump. And I'm just going to hook that up right now, and then we'll be ready to do the return line. And I'm going to route it similar. It comes off the other side of the throttle body, and I'm just going to run it. I'm going to run it from right here over, and it'll be right next to that line all the way back to the tank. The plumbing of the fuel line's done. Next thing you want to do is start working on the electrical on it. The only real sensor you have to add is an oxygen sensor, and you want to put it fairly close. You want to put it fairly close to your collector on your header or manifold. This is less than a foot back, maybe 8 inches back from mine. Ideally you'd want it up a little more, but I had to go where I could get the drill in. So I have my hole drilled. You can buy O2 sensor bung. With this kit, this plate came with a gasket and then these clamps. So we're going to go ahead and use it. If I get exhaust leaks around it, I'll go ahead and weld one in. For right now, we're going to use what came with it. So right now I'm putting the coolant temp sensor for the Holley fuel injection system right there in, and you'll notice I have the stupid HEI bigger distributor, and it's a real tight fit with the temp sensor. They're real close. Let me show you just how close. So once I get this tightened down, this distributor is in loose. Once I get it tightened down, it'll go down in and there'll be a little more room. So I tightened it up and I dropped the metal part down a little bit, and we have just a little bit of clearance there, just enough hopefully to put the plug in. Okay, I got everything wired up. This is a pretty straightforward setup. I mean, you've got your oxygen sensor, your coolant temp sensor, it's over on the other side of the distributor, throttle position sensor. I'm not sure, I'll have to look this up if it's a map sensor or what it is. I think it's checking for vacuum or pressure. That's all there really is. And then you have to put your positive, your negative, or try to clean up the wires, use zip ties, and get everything out of the way as best as I can. It could look better, but I'm just pretty excited to see it run now. So I'm going to go ahead and do the setup. Here's how simple it is. Out of this connector, I only used one wire, and that was the one going to the tack output for now. I do plan on hooking up an electric fan later, so I'll probably use another one. But in the meantime, I just pulled all the wires except for the tack output out of this harness, just to avoid having a big mass of wires here, so I'll add those as needed. Eventually, when I get a different distributor or ignition, I will hook it up so that the computer from the EFI can control the timing, but I'll do that later. Okay, once you get your wiring done, which is quite simple with this kit, you can go ahead and get it set up for your vehicle. So the first thing you got to do is turn the key on. You're going to have a few options. Cylinder, engine displacement. I looked up what my engine overbore is in the actual that's the actual displacement. Target idle speed. I think we're going to say 7. If you can see that. We're going to say 750 for now. We can adjust it later. My cam is stock to mild. It is just a Edelbrock Performer, so it's not radical. And we have no nitrous oxide. And we are doing we're not using the ignition timing right now. And I think that's it. Okay, so we got the wizard set up here. Initial start. I can hear the fuel pump working. We're going to go to monitor. You're going to want the air fuel ratio. There we go. Go ahead and see how we're doing here. started right up, and it's idling on its own. So I'm pretty happy with this. So the new EFI is in, and it's running now. I just started it from a cold start, pulled it out of the garage. Before, with the carburetor, it would have stalled by now. It's idling perfect. Every time I drive it, it seems to be getting a little better and a little better. So I'm thinking within a few days it should be really good.